Joining me now is Kenneth Brian of the Kenneth Brian Band. Their latest album is Keys to the Kingdom. Thanks so much for taking time to talk to me today, Kenneth.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me and having me
Uh,
back. Right? Didn't we talked
y-
like 4 or 5 years ago, right?
yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was looking at it and in my mind it was like 2 years ago, and then I'm like, no, it
Man,
was about 5 years
I hear
ago.
that. I
You
hear that, man.
joined me at the studios for AfterBuzz TV, and you actually played a couple of songs from your then new album with Lions. You played the song "Beautiful Storm"
Yeah,
and "Fly Away," and it was great. It was great to get to meet you, and great to hear the songs up close. You know, I felt I felt like a real celebrity because there you were like just a few feet away from me doing the songs, and that was really great. So it's a great place to start, really. So, what have the last few years been like for you? I know that some of what you've been up to, you went on tour with some great acts. I think that were a great compliment to you: Blackberry Smoke, ZZ
yeah,
Top, Leonard Skinner. So let's start there and just kind of talk about what you've been up to the last few years.
yeah. We did a lot of touring after With Lions came out. With Blackberry Smoke, great guys, man. I met those guys at a Government Mule show. I drove Steve Ferroni down there to sit in with Government Mule when Steve was playing with me, and I met Charlie, and we became really good friends. Just right off the bat, man. Sitting there having dinner, and ended up hanging out with those guys, and then doing a bunch of shows with them. Did some stuff with Skinner. Um, what else do we? There's been a bunch of different. We did Cheap Trick.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
man, what
Cheap
else?
Trick, just to interrupt, Cheap Trick is one of those bands that you can put them. I mean, you look at some of the festivals that they end up on. They end up on like an '80s theme festival. They'll end up, they can
Yeah,
open for like a really heavy band because everybody loves them. They can just kind of play with everything.
man,
So yeah.
that was great, and like they got all of us out on stage, and I don't know, man, just great guys. And Robin afterwards, we're in the dressing room, and like he's all out there, doing his show, and we're in the back, we're in the dressing room after the show. We have the tiniest little dressing room with like one chair, and like we're with ZZ Top too, and all of ZZ's like semis for merchandise was all like breathing exhaust into our little room, and
Sure.
and this guy comes in, knocks on the door, knock knock knock, and walks in, and he's got this like trench coat on and this weird hat, and he starts talking to us, and I didn't realize who it was, man, and it was Robin from Cheap Trick. He'd just got off stage and wanted to come back and hang out with the opener, but I didn't even recognize him, man. When he got off the stage, he looked like a spy in like a French 60s French movie or something. It's funny as could be. And but then I looked down and he had like karate or like ninja boots on. And I was like,
Well,
man, rock and roll. Where else do you get that? But
yeah,
really
and
great
and
guys. And Rick's awesome, and his son's awesome. Dak's great drummer. Oh
yeah,
yeah,
and
we
I
did
mean
some shows with.
Robin Zander's one of those guys that like you look at him and you're like, oh yeah, he looks like the guy on the cover of Budokan. And then I haven't seen I saw him live probably about 5, 6 years ago, and it's like he still sounds that way. And you're like, I
Oh
have
yeah.
no idea how he's able to, he's definitely made some kind of deal. Maybe he found the Fountain of Youth or something because
Well, he does live
he's in great
pretty
shape.
close to it. He lives down in Tampa, which is I'm in Gainesville right now, Florida. He lives in Tampa,
Right.
and well, Ponce Leon was looking for that thing and never found it. So maybe Robin Zander found it, man. Who knows? We'll have to
It,
text him and find out.
yeah, it would definitely make sense. So that's great though. And I hope that you get to play with some of these great bands that you get exposed to people that
Absolutely, we're doing more with Blackberry coming up. The pandemic kind of, I mean, geez, music's the last thing on anybody's mind when all that happened, but it kind of like messed everything up with everybody's touring and getting back to it now. And I mean, you're in LA. Are you still in LA or where are you
Yep.
at?
Yeah, I'm still
Yeah,
in LA, yeah.
so totally different. I was living out there for the last 6 years, and then our house burned down in that Woolsey fire out in Malibu. I was
Oh no, yeah,
at
I
a
remember that,
guest house
sure.
out there. Yeah, I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
uh, but anyway, man, and then the pandemic happened, and it was like, well, good time to skin on out. I went back to Alabama and redid a studio in Decatur, Alabama, for a producer that I work with named Johnny Sandlin that produced all the Allman Brothers and stuff. Produced Brothers and Sisters. Really great guy. He had passed away a few years ago, and I went to redo his studio. And now we're down in Gainesville. I grew up just like outside of Gainesville, Florida, out here in the swamp, and we're here right now, and I mean, plan on coming back to California at some point. When the world's a little more normal. I don't know if that's going to happen, but with the
Well,
with the normal anyway. But we'll be back at some point. Me and my
yeah,
girl.
I mean, this might not be the first place to look for normal, but in
Yeah,
terms
really.
of back to the way it used to be, in a lot of ways, I think that things are definitely a lot more open than they were,
Yeah.
even 6 months ago. And, people, different parts of the country, you can talk about the politics of it and all that,
Oh
but
yeah.
really it comes down to what the rules are in a
Yeah.
place.
Exactly.
And I mean, I went to see Slash's band,
Nice.
Slash and with Miles
Yeah.
Kennedy and the Conspirators, and it was an indoor venue, and it's one of those deals where it's like, yeah, you have to wear a mask, but if you're drinking or whatever, you don't have to worry about it. Most people were drinking, it was
Yeah.
fine, and that was like an indoor show. I've been to
Yeah.
shows at the Whiskey, and Whiskey a Go Go. It's like you and I in these little boxes on
Yeah.
the screen are about as close as people are standing there, and so it's as open, I feel like, as it can be, and
Yeah. I
it
mean, I used to live right behind the Whiskey. There's that parking lot, and then on Clark Street, I lived in that place right
sure.
behind it on a rooftop. Yeah, man, it was crazy. Like Jim Morrison had lived in that apartment, and Leonard Cohen, and of course,
Wow.
right next door, Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue. And it's crazy. I rented from this sculptor lady who'd been there since like the '70s, and she was rent controlled, and she was just super cool. Like there were like baby doll heads and all over the place, and I mean, it was just a freaky place, man. When the lady from the L.A. Gas company had to come and check the furnace, she was just like, thought she might be in a horror movie or something. But that was a cool place to live, and it was still kind of kicking. I saw that they're going to tear the Viper Room down now, and I don't know, man. Everywhere is changing when
Yeah.
I'm fighting a development here in my backyard here, and I grew up out in the country, and between High Springs and Alachua, Florida. And it seems like somebody wants to build a parking lot everywhere, even out here. It's weird, man, how things have gone in that direction. And like you said, the politics of it is all just whatever. I don't get into politics, man. It's a trap for me. I don't think people in music should really. I'm nobody. I can't speak for anybody else, but I just, you know. But as far as the pandemic and everything, I mean, it's like you're either going to get this thing or you're not. And I don't know. I mean, at a certain point, I had to go out. I was in LA and not releasing this record, and everything was locked down. And my neighbors had 3 masks on outside, and other people were having a beach party. And I mean, just it was all. And I got an offer to do Sturgis and do Summerfest, the second year, and I was like, I'm going to do them. I'm going to go
Yeah.
out and do them, and it was great, and it was all outdoor stages at both of those, and everybody, there was about a fifth of the people at Summerfest in Milwaukee, but man, Sturgis, there was like over 1 million people. I mean, it was insane, man. So, and a bunch of people didn't get sick, and there wasn't a bunch of crazy stuff, and I think that stuff kind of opened it back up a little bit and but I was gonna go see like this new record. Mike Campbell and Steve Ferroni and Mike Campbell from Tom Petty and Heartbreakers helped me get it together. They did the pre-production,
Right,
and
right.
and Mike was supposed to play here in Gainesville this weekend, and he had to cancel again with the Dirty Knobs because somebody got COVID. They're all getting on the plane. Somebody got COVID, so it's we're all trying to get back out there, but everywhere has all these different rules. I know it's frustrating for fans and um, music lovers. I actually I don't like to use the word fans for some reason, but people that love music, I know it's frustrating for them and it's frustrating for us. But I mean, I think it's getting there. We're getting there, where there's not so much stuff getting canceled and but
Yeah. Well,
you
it's
know,
interesting because you said earlier, I mean, obviously, the beginning of the pandemic, absolutely people weren't that worried about music. But once people were inside, all of a sudden it was like, yeah, I got to focus on stuff. And then
yeah,
music became a big part of it, I think, for a lot of people. And I've talked to a lot of musicians who, there are a lot of different ways to handle that, and I think a lot of them would do, people would do these live streams. At first they would be for free, just a way to interact with fans, and then some of them
yeah,
started charging a little bit. But a lot of people seem to have taken the opportunity to make new music because there's so
right,
much great new music coming out right now.
yeah,
And I think it's great to take advantage of that, and I think in some cases it is probably your more established bands who might not have been planning on putting out new music, but they're like, well, we can't do
absolutely,
anything else, so let's
absolutely,
do it. So it seems like it was a great time for you to, really work on the new music and talk a little bit. You mentioned the pre-production,
Yeah.
but I thought that I was reading about the recording of it, which you did out in Joshua Tree, and
Yeah.
I mean, I love that area. It's one of those. It's like to me, it's like Vegas and New Orleans. Love to visit, but I think if I was there for a couple weeks, I'd be like, I think I need to get back to what I'm
Well,
used to. But I love it out there.
I think a lot of people are feeling like that because a lot of people tried to move out there during COVID, in LA. And my buddy was like, "Oh no, all the prices are going up. It went from like 200,000 for a house up to $1 million or something." I said, "It won't last, man. The city people won't last out there." I lived out in Yucca Valley, right next to Joshua Tree, for about a year. When I first moved to California, we were touring with Lucinda Williams all the time. We did over 150 shows or something
Oh
with
wow.
her, and so I didn't have enough money to live in LA, and I didn't really want to live all up in it. I'm the opposite. I like being like out in the middle of nowhere and stuff. And so I moved out there, and being out there, I met a bunch of people, and Dave Ketching was one of the guys I met, and Hutch and Hutchinson. They both worked. Dave was in Eagles of Death Metal and Queens of Stone Age, and Hutch was the sound guy for Queens of Stone Age, and they have this studio out there. And I always wanted to record there, man. It's just the coolest place. It's out in Joshua Tree. They've had it since the '90s. So I mean, those guys have been existing out there for a long time, and you never know who's going to be out there. Billy Gibbons, or Josh Homme, or somebody would be recording, or PJ Harvey. All these people, all these cool people, and so I always wanted to record there. So I had all these songs, a lot of them anyway, that I had written in California over the last few years, just living in West Hollywood and living in Malibu, and then going through that fire and everything. It was a lot of material. And Tom had Petty had just passed away, and everybody was just going through it because of that, man. And Steve suggested to Mike, "Hey, Kenneth's got a new record, got new material for a record. Let's get it, let's do it." So Mike was going to produce it, and so we got into Steve's studio over there in Tarzana, and we just started working on songs, man. And it was just a few months after Tom passed, really, that we really started doing it. And it was pretty heavy, man. It was neat to, I'm working with my heroes. I had met Mike a few times, but I'd never really hung out with him and worked with him. And what a great guy, great guitar player. And Ferroni is one of my best friends and has been playing with me on and off for years. So Mike gets a gig with Fleetwood Mac, and he can't finish producing. So I said, "Hey, let's do it out at Rancho." And I'll use the band I was using live, which was Chris Cano, who's a LA guy from Ozo Motley and Orson and a bunch of bands, and Brandon Owens, who's a really great bass player and good friend of mine. And his brother was Ike Owens, that was in Mars Volta and a bunch of other different bands. Kind of eclectic guys, man. Anyway, so we went out there, and we just sort of knocked it out in the desert for like 4 days. I think we spent 5 days total. We recorded for 4 days. We did no more than like 2 or 3, 4 takes on those songs, and just nailed it out there. It's a really cool place, man. I recommend people check that studio out. It's called Rancho de la Luna, and it's just right there in Joshua Tree. And there's a bunch of places popping up out there, but this is like the tried and true rock and roll freak paradise out there that's been there since like the early '90s, and it's a really, really cool place. And Dave's a great guy, man.
Yeah, and what I know about that area is that there's a great venue. I mean, I guess it's attached to a barbecue restaurant, but Pappy and
Yeah,
Harriet's. I
yeah,
saw a band
dude.
called the Afghan Wigs out there
Oh
once, and
yeah,
it's such a
Afghan
cool
Wigs, man.
setting. Yeah, they've Greg Dooley, who's the singer of
Yeah,
that band. He's used studios out there a few times for a few of his
dude.
different projects.
Let me tell you, the first time we ever played Pappy and Harriet's, I was 22 years old. I'm 41, so it had been like 2002. And Robin had just bought that place from Harriet, and there were wild dogs running around out there, and nothing worked, and you had to go to the bathroom in a hole outside, and there were nothing but wild bikers. And I mean, seriously, it was like there was nothing out there. When I woke up in the morning, we were at that Pioneer Town Motel, and it was like the Roy Rogers room and Gene, because it used to be a fake Western town for
Yeah,
movies,
yeah.
And when I woke up in the morning, I was like, damn, I was like, it was like being on Mars or something. It was so cool. And but that bar, we played 2 or 3 shows there over that course of a few years, and man, there was like nobody there but 15 people. And I swear to God, there was like coyotes and wild dogs and stuff running around stealing your shit. And then over the years, it kind of built into somewhere people played. And then, Paul McCartney decided he was going to play out there off the cuff. My friend Rusty plays with guitar with him, and they went out and did. And then, of course, I think Jimmy Page played there. And so that, or not Jimmy Page, Robert Plant. And it's become a thing. I think they sold the bar recently, and man, I haven't been out there one time where it wasn't, uh, you know, backside to elbow packed.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, and I think
But
that it's definitely gotten a lot more attention. And that was
absolutely,
even like 7, 8 years ago, the last time I was there. But you see it pop up a lot, and people, there's definitely more of an awareness of it. When you're talking about the recording itself, I wanted to go back to this idea, which I thought was great because I had read this in the notes that
yeah,
you would I think there's always something to, and I'm not, as a music fan, I don't always notice it, but when you hear it after the fact, sometimes it'll make sense when a band like basically plays live in the studio,
yeah,
instead of doing everything individual. And the fact that you not only did that, but like you said, you only would do maybe 3 or 4 takes.
yeah,
I think that that's a great way to really capture what the band really sounds like. I think
yeah,
sometimes, look, yeah, you mess something up, you want to go do it over, but sometimes there's so much attention to like, well, we want it to sound perfect, but it's like, we really
yeah.
shouldn't sound perfect, should it?
No, man. I mean, I grew up on the edge of when tape was going out and digital was coming in, and uh, learned how to record down here at a place called Mirror Image in Gainesville. Then when I worked with Johnny Sandlin in North Alabama, and like I said, Johnny was in Hourglass with Dwayne and Greg Allman when they were kids. He was the drummer. Then he went on to work with Tom Dowd in Miami. Then he produced like all the Allman Brothers hits. So I had recorded a bunch of records before that, but when I worked with Johnny, it was always my feeling to want to do this anyway. But he showed me how to get, he would spend an hour getting the snare sound and getting the rhythm track sound and a few things, and then everything else was live. And it was like, I always felt like, hell, if we can't do it in 2 or 3 takes, like we're going to lose the feeling. And that's that whole Southern rock. That doesn't come from Southern rock. It just comes from limitation of recording a record down here or in Alabama or Mississippi back in the day when you didn't have that much tape and that many mics, and you just, Aretha or whoever went into Muscle Shoals and just laid it down, man. And because of that, there's that feeling, that you capture. And with rock and roll, I think it's extra important because, man, you want that punch in there, man. I mean, you want that thing happening. And and you got to have the right guys to do it. And the next one I'm going to do let's pretty much the same way and on tape. And so you know, uh, it's even more of a thing, man, because you really can't go back in the computer and move this there and do. I think sometimes I've said this before, but I think limitation is really your friend, because we're in an age where, like, okay, you want, like, talking about Slash. I love Slash, man. I met him at Dupar's, man. He was
which
so
which for
cool, man.
people
I
that aren't
never
from
met him,
Southern California, it's to think of it, it's like
dude.
it's like a diner basically. It's a great
Yeah,
place for pancakes. Yeah.
good pancakes, a little
Yeah.
pricey, but good pancakes. I'm
Yeah.
waiting on my cousin who lives in Australia. I hadn't seen her since I was like 4, and I run into Slash. And by the time they get there, I'm talking to Slash, and they're like, "Is that?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." That's when you only run into your cousins every 30 years. It's good to have Slash there.
Yeah. Oh,
But
that's great.
anyway, man, if you want to sound like him or what, you can research what the guy uses, and you have 500 different overdrive pedals you can try to, that you can buy. Like when I was growing up, there were 2 or 3 overdrive pedals. There was a tube screamer and there was a blues breaker or whatever. But, so now when you're recording, there's all these choices of, I want echo on my vocal. Well, you can choose the Space Echo plugin or the whatever plugin or you can do what we did, which is use an actual old tape machine. I used a couple of them, and just go, you know what, we're going to use this, and this is the sound of what we're going to use on the record, and we're just going to manipulate it and use it. And that's what, like, when you listen to old Elvis records or any Sun records, Johnny Cash or Jerry Lee Lewis, they all have this certain reverb, slapback, tiled. They had a tiled room where they sang, and it was very specific. And when it comes on, that's a Sun record. And I think a lot of places are kind of missing that. And Rancho kind of has that feeling, like, it's kind of raw. And it's funny, man. Like, it just when everything doesn't exactly work exactly like it should all over the place. I mean, sometimes that's your friend, because then you've got a signature thing going on. So,
It's you were talking about recording on tape, and it was just reminding me that last fall, a lot of people, much like myself, we all watched that three-part Beatles documentary, Get
oh yeah,
Back, and just how fascinating that was. But it's so funny to think about. Yeah, it's 50 years ago, but the idea that the tape operator's like, oh, should I erase that? And the idea of like, think about all the great music that's been erased,
oh man,
because they were trying to save money on tape.
absolutely, man. When I just went and cleared out Johnny Sandlin's studio in Decatur, Alabama, there were tapes and tapes and tapes of Allman Brothers stuff and Billy Joe Shaver and all this stuff that was recorded at Muscle Shoals and Capricorn, and it's just sitting there, like half of it nobody's ever heard, like and some of it's been like, it would say whatever record, Eddie Hinton record, and then it said, scratched out, and they recorded over the tape to use it for something else. And it's crazy. It really is. Now that's just like gold. I think that uh, one of those, the last guy that was in sort of working with Johnny years ago, is is a friend of mine who's really done well in Americana in the last few years, Jason Isbell. And Jason and his ex-girlfriend years ago were staying at Johnny's and cleaning out the garage, and Jason found this old reel of tape that had been sitting next to a speaker, that should have been ruined. It had been sitting next to a 15-inch speaker for like 20 years, and it was all the Hourglass rehearsal tapes with Dwayne Allman learning how to play slide and stuff.
Oh,
and
wow.
and Johnny was like, "Oh hell, it ain't gonna work. It's not. We shouldn't even listen to it." He was like, "Man, I had my hand over my ears because he thought it was gonna be all warped from being next to a magnet, because you can't keep tape
Yeah,
next to anything
sure.
magnetic." Magically, it was all perfectly fine. And
Wow.
so, and it's just kind of, there it is, like somebody could have thrown that out, or whatever, just put it out in the trash, or recorded over it or whatever. But there's this gem, from 1966 in Decatur, Alabama, before they moved out to LA. And that's crazy, man. It really is. It's a totally different world when it comes to all that stuff. And I remember you talking about the clubs in LA. Johnny told me when they came out there with Hourglass, Greg Allman, they were rehearsing at the Troubadour. Doug Weston let them rehearse, and he said, we looked down and there were these boxes in front of us with speakers in them, and Greg Allman said, "What's that thing?" And they said, "That's a monitor," And he said, "I swear to God, it's the truth." He said, "A monitor." He goes, "Yeah, so you can hear your voice," and they put his voice through it. And he goes, "Oh hell, turn mine off." He said, "I
Oh, that's
sound
great.
terrible. Do I really sound like that?"
Uh, well, and we've talked a little bit about the recording, but let's talk about the album itself. It is called Keys to the Kingdom. The song that I've heard repeatedly as I was getting ready to talk to you is Falling Again. And the audio audience for our conversation right now, they'll hear a nice long chunk of that after you and I are done talking.
Nice.
So let's talk a little bit about that song and how there's 10 songs on there, and the notes for it. And I know you don't sit there and write these things, but they describe it as an anthology that spans the roots of American rock and roll, blues, and alternative country. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about sort of putting these 10 songs together, which I understand they were influenced, as you said earlier, by the last 5-6 years you spent living out here in California.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being out in that area, man, and just being around different people, like the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers guys, first Steve and then Scott Thurston, then Tom and Mike. And those guys really kind of help shape the sound. Hey, maybe you should use a Strat on this, or maybe you should, use this amp on that. So sonically, like those guys kind of helped, with sonically with everything. And just I don't know, man, being in Hollywood, and not the, like, TV Hollywood, but the Hollywood, man. I mean, it's just a
Yeah.
cool place. LA's got this cool vibe, 20s Art Deco, thing going on in the background. It's like, it's funny. I was watching like Perry Mason or something from like 1961. And I was like, oh man, I know that corner. And then just, like you said, running into Slash at the Pancake Place, and, all this crazy stuff, and, you know, uh, just hanging out with all these people. going through, I kind of had a magical couple years there. And then with the weather and the drought and the fires and all that stuff, I mean, a lot of the feeling of the record came from just sort of both of those things mixed together. And I write a lot of songs, man. And those were sort of the 10 songs that really worked together. And, and like I said, I got them together. I got what I thought worked together. But then I brought some other songs in um, for Mike Campbell to hear. And, he was like, this one's good. He didn't like that one. He didn't think that one fit or what, and it was like, it was cool, man. Cause it was kind of like, I had to play them live in front of them, man, by myself. It's like, holy
Wow.
And so, here's one of your heroes. The guy's from like where I'm from, and he was, he's one of the greatest guitar players ever lived. And it's like, okay, Junior, what do you got? And so there I am, having to do that. And that was really, it was cool. It kind of kicked it into another level. Cause like, well, I really had to get it together. But the songs, I mean, where I come from, man, the whole, I grew up with like country and gospel and blues and stuff like that. And then I got into rock and roll and kind of mixed it all together, which had already been mixed together a bunch of times by Hank Williams and by Elvis and by the Allman Brothers and Tom Petty and all this stuff. And, blues and countries and Grant Parsons, speaking of the, another Florida guy out in
Sure.
he was
Yeah.
out in Joshua Tree, the Eagles, all that stuff. And so it's like, just doing it in a way that's not copying those guys, but moving it forward and just kind of mixing everything cool together. It's it's the beauty of America, right? I mean, mixing it all together, and we got this cool music and cool food and cool culture that is all mixed up. And it's just I think I don't think about when I write a song. I don't think about if it's going to be played on this or that or whatever. I just focused on the song and the music. And so
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, obviously, because in so many ways, I mean, you hear the term, melting pot will describe our country, the makeup of the people, but also
yeah,
because of that, culturally, I mean, you think about what music is, and in general, what people have, back when they had the iPods or on their iPhone, now what a mixtape used to be. It's funny to think about. I'm 46, so like
yeah,
when I was growing up, top 40 radio was like you would hear Van Halen and then you'd hear Madonna and then you'd hear Michael Jackson and
yeah,
then you'd hear Def Leppard, and it was just like it all somehow worked, it all fit together, and in a way that doesn't really make sense when you think about it now, but
absolutely.
it's great when you talk to musicians about like, yeah, there's so many influences, and it's like, yeah, somebody's a country artist, somebody's a rock artist, yeah, of course they love all that stuff, but everybody's got little bits of other things, that
Right,
and you can definitely hear. I mean, it's like, yeah. I mean, I think that the way it was written up in the description of about the album, I think it's important to not call this album, your music in general, any one thing. You know what I mean?
right.
Because it has a sound. Sure, you could say like, yeah, it's kind of like a southern rock sound because that's like an umbrella sound. But I think there's so
Yeah,
much more to it, and you really hear it from the songs that I know from the With Lions album that we talked about a few years ago, and then this song Falling Again. So I think that's great too in terms of, like you were saying, some of the bands you'd play with, but you could also play with Cheap Trick, so I think it's
yeah,
it's great.
exactly, man. And well, and the other thing about this album is there wasn't anybody else involved. I produced it. Like, I flew my engineer from Alabama out that I really love to work with, Jeremy Stevens, who has a studio in Alabama, Clearwave, and he worked with Johnny Sandlin forever. And it was just me. I wrote the songs and we recorded the songs and I produced it, and there wasn't anybody else's like creative input really. So this is like kind of just pure me. There wasn't anybody from a label because this came out on my label, so it wasn't anybody from a label like the last couple going, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this, or maybe you shouldn't wear that shirt. you know Maybe you should whatever. It was just, what, the it was like, man, the world is absolutely just in flames right now and everything's crazy. And you know what, I feel like just doing this thing just the way that I'm going to do it. And it's nice to do that every once in a while. A lot of times it's great to have everybody else's creative input. But I mean, I think at a certain point, in no matter what you do, if you're a builder or a painter or a farmer or whatever you do, you know what you're doing after a while. And you're like, I'm not going to raise the barn like this guy and that guy said to do it. I'm going to do it like I know how to do it. And so this is kind of like that for me. It's just like a departure of taking a lot of input and just going. I'm gonna do it the way that I hear it in my head, and I think it definitely came out that way, man, because it's raw and it hits. So
Yeah, and I mean that has to be great. I mean, obviously you talked about all the different people that you collaborated with along the way, but for it to still be this is your vision, your sound, your record, I
yeah,
think that's got to be a great feeling. So, as we wind down, and again, the album is called Keys to the Kingdom, and people can get it now. And the song "Falling Again," that there's that's the one that's out there. That's the one that people can find, I assume, on YouTube and everything. Where everybody finds
it's
everything.
everywhere you
Yeah.
get music. Wherever you get it. We'll also have vinyl soon, and it's funny. I was looking at that song's doing really well. But in a song called Hard Heart, but Keys to the Kingdom, the title track is actually doing better than any of them. So check that one out too.
Oh, great. Yeah. And so, you kind of mentioned in passing that there might be some plans in terms of, playing with some other bands. What is, if it's up to you, what is the ideal plan for getting out there and making people aware of Keys to the Kingdom? Is there specific touring plans, or what are you looking at for the rest of 2022?
Right now, I have certain festivals coming up, some bikers stuff. I have a bike festival I'm playing down in Tallahassee. We have Summerfest, we have Sturgis, we have all this stuff we usually do. Some shows coming up with Blackberry, I believe, in June. And I'd like to be out as much as possible. It's kind of been hard because a lot of places closed down last year and a lot of things got bought up. And, it's another thing people don't really talk about too much. I mean, there's like two companies that own everything now. And I don't want to sit here and talk bad about them in case they don't want to send me my check, but but
No,
there's
but I
there,
mean, yeah, look, and look, when it comes to getting airplay, you have basically two companies that own all the radio stations in the same
yeah,
cities,
you know,
Yeah.
and
So
so
so the
it's
business
not
side of
great
it, it's a
freedom.
lot harder to get you because you used to be like, oh, this DJ in Chicago really likes this, and their friend in Cleveland is going to play it too.
Yeah,
But
man,
now it's like
defense.
their
Yeah,
bosses who are based in Atlanta say no, these are the 40 songs you have to play. So
and
I can see how it makes it all difficult.
there goes the last DJ.
Exactly.
I mean, that's it. And it used to be this whole network of people that were cool and they had this thing, rock and roll thing, and it's changed, man. The world's become more poppy, more corporate in every way. I mean, look at country music now. My God, I can't even listen to it. I grew up in it, man, but I can't. So it's like it's definitely things have gone in that direction. I feel bad for kids just starting because their goals are like how to get 5 million TikTok hits
Yeah.
and that's not going to make a good record. That's not going to make a good song. And hopefully we're coming back around. I heard CDs were coming back the other day. Did you hear that?
I did hear that there's been a
I
couple
couldn't
of
believe it.
places. One of them was Rolling Stone wrote about it, and
Yeah,
and I understand.
Rolling Stone
My
wrote
thing
about
is
music.
always
Wait a minute.
well, my thing is like as great as vinyl is, it's great when your music listening experience is you've got a great sound system and you're going to sit and really immerse yourself with it. Now I've got two
Yeah,
small kids. I got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and
nice.
when I listen to music, it's usually I got one earbud in one ear while I'm doing the
Yeah,
dishes to make sure they're not calling for me. So
yeah,
the fact that I can get a CD of a new album and then I can rip it into my iTunes, that to me is like I can listen to it in the car, I can listen to it that. So
yeah,
as much as I would love to sit and listen and be able to flip the record over when it's done, for
yeah.
me CDs are just more practical in the digital age. I mean, I I
Absolutely,
still
man.
I still have one of my cars still has a CD player in it, and the other one's old enough it has a tape deck in it too. So you
Nice.
know to bring stuff on the go, I think is great, and I think just people have just started to realize that there is some value to the CD. The sound is really good on a CD,
Oh,
and you don't have to worry
sound is
about it.
great.
Yeah,
Absolutely, man. Just take care of them, and I mean, obviously we love them because we can go out and sell them to you.
yeah.
The last time we and get you the music, but the last time we played at or not last time before at Summerfest, we had CDs out, and this girl that was like 13 years old goes over and she's looking at it, and she picks it up. She's looking at the CD, and she's like, "Oh, looking," and my guy says, yeah, you want to get one of those? That's like the latest one. And she goes, what is it? And I was like, oh my God. So I'm glad if it has a resurgence. I'm glad because I think, physical things are good, man. One day there's going to be a meteor or like solar waves or something, and everything digital is going to disappear. It will happen. I
Yeah.
mean, everything like not, CD is digital, but it's a physical form of it, and it's like, I don't know, man. It's nice to have something. And vinyl is good, but man, it's heavy. If you somebody like me that's moved 37 times or 39 times now in your life because you just like like to do that, it gets old after a while. One time when I was living in Texas, I left all my. I was like, I can't lug this stuff anymore, man. And so it's cool and I love it and I grew up on it. But man, it's like 500 pounds in the U-Haul, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, there it just takes one accident and then your vinyl never plays the same again the rest of it. The CDs, it was all about wiping
Hey,
it off, you know.
we can end with this, man. The first time I ever remember getting my behind beat by my dad when I was a little kid is he listened to all kind of stuff, mostly bluegrass, but he loved blues and he had the Fleetwood Mac Rumors record like
Oh,
everybody did, right?
sure, of
Great
course.
record, amazing. I decided I guess I was gonna like, surf down the hallway on it when I was like a little tyke, man. And that's
Oh
like the
man.
first time I remember being connected to a record because he beat my ass pretty good. Because and I never did that again. I always had respect for records after that. But that's pretty funny, man. But that record's so good, man. I don't blame him for smacking me. So
No, yeah, exactly. And you know what?
God, somebody's gonna like, yeah, man.
That's one more copy of Rumors that had to be sold to replace that, because there
That's
were
right,
so
man.
many.
Another triple
Yeah.
platinum week,
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kenneth, look, it's great to get a chance to catch up with you, and hopefully, some of your travels take you back out this way. And
Oh yeah, I'll
I
be back
would
soon.
would love to actually see some of these songs again. The album is Keys to the Kingdom. KennethBrianBand.com, and the Instagram is at the Kenneth Brian Band. And look, there's a good old fashioned CD right there.
Yeah,
And
there you go.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, that my final thing is I agree with you. The idea of the physical connection with music is something that I think is lost on a lot of younger people. It's great how
Yeah,
they find music, but to sit down and like I want to listen to these 10 new songs. And you look at the artwork that goes with it. I love when lyrics come with it too, because that
yeah,
helps me to sort of really get to know the songs. And yeah, when you don't get any of that, like sometimes it's like if you buy an album digitally, it's like, well, here's a file that has the album artwork. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to look at it.
yeah. You're
I
never
want
gonna
to
pick
actually,
that up, man.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we sell a lot of CDs still to Europe. I mean, like, yeah, I mean Europe. They order them like yeah, every week. You got a ton of orders from barely anybody in America. Well, down here, you know, Florida, Bama, it's the southeast.
yeah,
We just got alpha tapes, man. So we're coming. I'm just kidding, but uh,
right.
it's all
Catch
good.
it
It's
up.
all good. I got my, but it's Europe's still on it, man. They still order a lot of CDs. Like whenever we do promos in Europe, they always want a ton of CDs to give away, and it's still a thing over there. So hopefully something comes back. I mean, just like you said, this magical thing that you get for free off the internet's not really helping people like make good music or go to the grocery store making music, and it's kind of it's been an interesting time for a lot of people, man, because I mean that helps. You want to support people, I mean, if somebody makes a good product, I like to support American made stuff, and I'm willing to pay for it. And so if it's
Yeah.
music that I like, man, I always try to, if I listen to it on YouTube, I go and buy it. So
Yeah, and I definitely I prefer the idea of like I said, here's 10 songs, and like you think of them all put together and like they were careful. You were talking
yeah,
about how some of them didn't fit and they're carefully selected. It's like Rumors is a great album because of the collection of songs. Aerosmith Toys in the Attic is a great album because here's the 10 songs on it. They all
exactly.
work together. So yeah, well, Kenneth, I look forward to getting the CD and seeing you guys perform live. Like I said, the album Keys to the Kingdom, KennethBrianBand.com, and the Kenneth Brian Band on Instagram. Thanks again for your time. Great catching up with you.
Dude, thanks for having me. Send me your address. I'll send you some stuff. I'll send you a CD. And God bless the family, man. And stay, keep it real. Thanks for having an interest in rock and roll, man. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, you too. Thanks so much. And as I said, for our audio listeners, let's give a listen now to the new song. Thanks.